All right. Hi, everybody. Zach from Coherence again, and today we are going to be migrating a application from Render to Coherence. So if you are currently running your application on Render or were thinking of doing that, and you were instead interested in deploying your app into Google Cloud or Amazon Web with your own cloud account and all the customizability and cost and compliance benefits, future-proofing, as well as learning benefits that can come from that, but you still want to make it really easy to do that. That's what we're going to do today. So in just about 10 minutes, we will have a working deployment of our application. So here's what we've got. I've got a to-do app with a database on Render. This is what the front end of the app looks like. So it's going to be, I can add, I think my app might have gone to sleep on Render here, but it'll wake up. It's going to be a task management app. We've looked at the same app in our Heroku migration as well. And storing these to-dos in the database. It's based on this repository, which is a fast API application, a lightweight Python web framework using SQL Alchemy as its ORM. With Render, there's no proc file needed like there was on Heroku. The only configuration is the settings here, where I've put my install and my start command. So yeah, as we can see, we've got my task. I can update it, I can delete it, and this is running on Render, and we're going to get the same thing running over here on Coherence. So first thing we're going to do is take this repo, go over to Coherence, and create our team. And I'm going to call my team Render Migrations. And we are going to onboard an existing app. This is going to be to do fast API. We're going to use Google Cloud. I'm going to paste my repo here. I'm going to go grab my Google Cloud project, which I've got right here. So we're going to throw that in here. I can choose my region. We have a lot of different regions available. I'm just going to stick with US East. I'm going to use the main branch and ready to continue. So, I've, as a Coherence admin, obviously installed a bunch of applications from my GitHub before, so I don't need to click these two buttons, but you would just click these buttons and click yes. All right, now we're going to go over here, copy this, grant Coherence some access to be able to manage this thing. We're just going to choose owner, as it suggests in the docs here. In our documentation and our migration guide, we do talk a lot about scope down permissions that you could use that are less permissive than owner, but just for the purpose of getting this thing working. If I had variables defined in Render, it'd be easy to bring those over. I don't have any variables defined besides my database URL. For database URL, I had to manually do this in Render. I'm not a Render expert, so it's possible there is some way to have the database auto-populate the URL here for me, like it does on Heroku, but I didn't get that to work. But anyway, all I have is database URL, which Coherence will automatically populate without doing anything. So I don't have to worry about that one, but if I had variables, I could add them here. I'm going to skip this since I don't have any. Oops. And yeah, so now we need to generate our Coherence configuration. So, as we looked at sort of the two key steps here, we're installing our requirements and our start command. Coherence is two ways to do this. One is with a Dockerfile, which I don't have in my repo, right, as we can see. So I could add one of those and I'd have total control over the application I create. The other way is to use Nixpacks, which is sort of the equivalent of build packs on Heroku or Render. And if I do that, I won't have to define the install command. It'll figure that out by itself. It's pretty smart. And then I'll just have to define this start command. So let's see what this API-based GPT configuration generator comes up with, which is a beta feature we're running on Coherence to try and make this stuff super easy. And if it doesn't get it perfect, we'll tweak it. Cool. So actually pretty psyched. It got this pretty much perfect on the first try. There's nothing I need to change. It pulled my start command from the proc file. It's not different from the dev command. Dev is what's used on our cloud workspaces. Prod is what's used in a cloud deployment. You don't really have to worry about the distinction if that doesn't make sense yet, but obviously a lot in our docs to read about. But yeah, this put the right command in both places. It did add a database. I'll make a newer version of Postgres since we're starting a new app from scratch here. But that doesn't even really matter. Would have worked fine the other way, and so I don't really need to touch anything there. And then with Coherence, you have two options for how you use this configuration file. One is manage this in our UI, so sort of like render. I don't have to touch my repo, can just leave it in the UI. The other is managing in the repo, so sort of a GitOps style, like the Heroku proc file, except it's a little bit more comprehensive because it will also include things like the add-ons from the resources. Render also has a YAML file, which if you're using that for your app, this will be more familiar, the manage in repo option. Since it's simpler, I'm going to stick with manage UI for now and just hit continue. That'll save the configuration to my app, and then we should be able to make sure, as we see, Coherence did detect the service I added. I do have a route at the root that returns between 200 and 399. Otherwise, I could customize that, and obviously we have docs here. And the app is listening to port, and both of those things were true. Have my port there to make that easy. So we will check both those boxes when this is checking the services again in case I change something at that step. And when I hit configure, it's going to just warn me. This is actually going to go ahead and provision. It's going to take between 7 and 30 minutes, probably about 20 minutes to create a database and the rest of this stuff. And so we'll click proceed. This little thing was also telling us not to worry. We can always delete this stuff that we go ahead and create. So yeah, I'm going to pause this. We'll come back in about 20 minutes or so when this configuration job is run and completed. I'll show you what it's doing and hopefully have a working application. Thanks. All right, so where we left off was about 20 minutes ago. Got sidetracked into something else, but you wouldn't have to wait. You were doing this, so you can see the infrastructure created by the infrastructure job, both the initial one and subsequent ones as you create and remove environments and edit your Coherence configuration to create resources. So this successfully created. And then my first build pipeline automatically ran, and this just failed. So, I can dig into the logs right in the Coherence UI here. I don't have to dig around the GCP console. And then I can see, cloud build. I see a deployment failure error, so it asked me to look at the logs URL. I don't even have to do that in the Coherence case because I'm able to just jump in and see cloud run log. So it says UVcorn not found. That was my startup command from over here. And I can also see cloud run events, which is like a metadata coming out of the cloud run API, which can be helpful sometimes, saying the configuration's ready, but the ready state is failed. So Coherence has some cool stuff to help me debug here. I've got this AI troubleshooter. Sometimes this really provides super helpful information. Sometimes it doesn't. Usually with this error, I already know what's wrong. It's the same thing I went through in the Heroku video. If you watch this, I just forgot about it. But with this error, it's going to over-index on the port error messaging from the cloud build logs, I think. But we will see what it says. Just for fun, because as I said, I do kind of have a good theory for what's going on here already. Yeah, so it's trying to check expose and just checking the logs, which we can do here more specifically. So this UVcorn not found, what's going on? We do explain this in our docs under popular frameworks. And it's sort of what's happening here is for a Python app, I need this opt VM activate. This is to activate the Python virtual environment, which is when I use Nixpacks instead of my own Dockerfile. If I had my own Dockerfile where I ran the requirements install, I wouldn't have to worry about any of this. It would have worked with the config I had. There's some similar stuff with Ruby when you use Nixpacks. If I look at Rails, we have another similar call out, this root profile command, or activate my Ruby environment. So that's essentially what I need to do here is just add this to my Coherence configuration, which I can go and do right in line here since I chose not to do this in my repo. And just put this in the Same list syntax. I'll do the same thing for deb and for prod. And that should do it. I'm gonna hit save. This will check if infrastructure is needed and then submit another build. So this will run about 5 minutes from now. I think we should have a working deployment. I'll pause the video and come back when that's ready. But you know, you would, yeah, see you in a few. All right, so 4 minutes later, you can see the build step does get faster as the image gets cached, and that'll continue to get better. And you know, we've got our pipeline speed insights. I didn't really do a tour of Coherence in this video, but these are aggregated as part of our build performance and analytics, alongside other cool stuff like PR velocity, release velocity, size, review time stats, and just general usage data on this analytics tab. But for this environment, which again, alongside previews and static environments, sort of like the best of render and Heroku pipelines and preview environments capabilities. Here's where you could have managed the variables we skipped during onboarding, as well as see all the automatically managed ones from Coherence. I do have a working deployment of this, so it does warn me my cert might not be valid yet. Sometimes they're slow on Google, but this is a valid cert, as you can see. And this should save the task to Postgres just like it did on render, update it, and you know, I've got a working deployment. I could create as many of these environments as I want right in the Coherence UI, as well as using the review apps functionality similar to render, but there's actually even more flexibility here. This can create for all pull requests just like render, or it can limit to a particular label on GitHub as well, which is really a useful feature. And that's it. My app's migrated. It's been 12 minutes of working time. I could have cut out that last couple minutes if I had read the docs more carefully myself. And now I'd be all set to add a custom domain and go ahead and replace my render application with an app in my own Google Cloud project, which, yeah, let's go ahead and just take a look at that for a second. I can see in that cloud project that I deployed into all of the resources that I created. So, you know, I'll have a VPC, I'll have a Cloud SQL instance. You know, you can see this is using version 15, just like we requested. And, you know, I could do anything I could do directly in GCP directly to this. Like, Coherence is not sitting between me and my application, just helping me use all this stuff more effectively. And obviously in our documentation, linked to up here, there's tons more about how to do everything that you need to operate your application. And always feel free to reach out, get in touch. We're happy to help with any issues you run into. So look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much.